But Brandon, let's move on into the top three teams. And the first one, we're going to look at the Georgia Bulldogs. This was a team that last year finished 4-4. They were tied with Kentucky and Tennessee, but 8-5 overall, split right in between them, right behind the Tennessee Vols. And for me, I want to start with, I know that we could start with, it's Kirby Smart's second year, and what improvements will we see? We're going to get to that. I want to start with, to me, the key for this team moving into this year, and that is going to be Jacob Eason. This is a kid last year, just over 2,400 yards, 16 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. If he can pick things up and get them going right from the word go this year, he has got to be a force to be reckoned with in only his sophomore year if Georgia is going to want to do special things in 2017.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think that with Jacob Eason, we saw what he was able to do last season at quarterback, and he wasn't bad. He wasn't bad. He was, what was he, Ricky? He was a freshman, and you almost can't expect much more out of a freshman. And I thought Eason absolutely did a formidable job, but now it's time to take the next step. And he's had a pretty good spring, I think. And he's going to be a guy who you look at coming into this year, and there's going to be a lot of eyes on him. And why is that? Is because on the other side of the football, you have a chance to rival Alabama's defense. Mm-hmm. And it's Kirby Smart, so you know that's the area where they're going to be good. He came from Nick Saban's house, Alabama. And I think that it's going to be, and he ran that defense for a little while. So I think that for Eason not to be able to take that next step, he had a completion percentage of about 55%, and I think that his accuracy, he needs to cut down on that and stretch the field a little bit more, some more big plays, and I think that he can do that. But I also think that it's going to be important to note that Nick Chubb is back. He's back for another year, and you have a healthy Nick Chubb, and we've talked about this. I feel like we talked about it just a couple weeks ago, even though it was longer than that, but you have a healthy Nick Chubb, and if he's able to stay healthy, we saw what he was able to do when he was healthy a couple of years back. Mm-hmm. And this guy is very good. He's very talented, and he'll help make this offense that much better and take a little pressure off of Eason. But I think that we're going to see a little bit more of some run-pass, more balance. More balance in the run-pass game, and kind of separation there. Under their offensive coordinator, who I think has, again, some things up his sleeve to be able to see what he'll be able to do. Jim Chaney, he gave the quote-unquote freshen up term for this offense, and give them a couple more options to be able to do, and scheming around different things that they'll be able to do. So I think that Eason is going to be... He's going to be, I don't want to say they live and die by Eason's play, because they won't.
He needs to improve, though.
But he will be a guy who, with as good as this defense I think is going to be, one of the best in the SEC, certainly the best on their side, I think that he needs to take that next step and see where he gets, and because that's where either you can take them far or you can hold them back. And I know we already talked about this with Alabama, but that's kind of the same thing with Jalen Hurts. We talked about, okay, you did a really pretty good job in your first year, Jalen, but now what's the next thing you need to do?
What have you done for me lately?
Exactly. It's kind of one of those things. And it's one of those where, we saw Hurts. He was able to run the football a whole lot last year, and he ran it really well, but how was he as a passer? And it's not necessarily the same thing here with Eason, because he's a passing quarterback. He's more of a pocket quarterback, but how is he going to improve on that? And how is he going to take that next step forward? How do you do it? And I think he's definitely tried to make those strides here in the offseason.
Well, and the reason why I say he's the most important piece is because of that next step. I mean, you look at this team, and they are a top 20 defense. They also have a running back tandem in Nick Chubb and Sonny Michael, who... they're going to hold down the fort running the football, and they are going to be a tandem in the backfield that gives Eason some support. He needs to take that next step, and that next step to me is basically, it's not necessarily having a Heisman season. To me, it's, are you going to be the one to lead this team? Are you going to be the if de facto leader of this team when it is crunch time and we're playing Florida and we're down by a score? Are you going to be able to be the one to go ahead and bring us to victory? And that is what he needs to do, because last year, Florida's defense only let him score one touchdown, and he didn't even have a $150 through the air. Now, to be honest, that defense also shut down Nick Chubb in that game. Nick Chubb had longest run last year against Florida, 7 yards. Only had 9 carries for 20 yards in that game. So, to me, I look at it where some of the big reasons why Georgia couldn't do anything last year was 3 of their 5 losses, came against crucial teams. Yeah, you beat Auburn, which was a number 9 team in the nation when you beat them, but Ole Miss, you get blown out of the water 45-14. Not saying Ole Miss was bad, I'm just saying you got blown out of the water. Tennessee, you end up losing by 3 points at home. Vanderbilt, you lose by 1 point. There's no reason you should have lost to Vanderbilt by a point. You shouldn't even have lost to them at all. And then you lose to Florida, another, like, Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Florida. You have to do better against those ranked opponents. And I know people are going to say, Ricky, but we opened the year beating number 22 North Carolina, and they even had Mitch Trubisky, who went 2nd overall in the NFL draft. SEC-ranked teams are better than ACC-ranked teams. It is a proven fact, which is funny because Clemson fans are probably going to say, hey, Ricky, which conference won the national title game over? It's a wash. Alabama beat you the year before. You're tied 1-1. But this year, what's important, Florida, neutral site game, which is basically a road game for both teams. Tennessee, you are going to Knoxville. You're going to Rocky Top this year. Oh, that's right. You also have a road game against Notre Dame. And I know some people would say, well, Ricky, pump the brakes. Notre Dame is kind of on the downcline, per se. They could still be a tough team, especially in South Bend on the road. Georgia's got to win those 3 games. Oh, yeah, and then on top of it, they play Auburn. Where do they play Auburn, Brandon? On the road. So you play all 4 of those tough teams, except for Florida, but kind of it is because it's a neutral site game, all of them away from your home stadium.
So, Ricky, I've got this team going through on a first couple of rough looks. I've got this team pegged for 9 wins.
That's rough to you? 9 is rough?
No. In a rough look.
Oh, okay.
In a rough
like
look.
Like a rough
draft.
Okay, I thought you were saying, hey, Ricky, it's going to be a rough year. I only got 9 wins for these guys.
No. No, like roughly just looking at it, I think
I got you.
Here's the ones that I think that they've that I think that they've got. No, is Appalachian State. I think they beat them. Notre Dame, they beat them. Samford. So there's 3. Tennessee, Vandy, Mizzou, 6. South Carolina, Kentucky, and Georgia Tech, and there's 9. The ones that I've still got:
Auburn, Florida, Miss State.
Auburn on the road will be interesting. Florida will just be interesting because it's Florida. And
you're high on the Bulldogs.
And Mississippi State.
You're high on them.
The reason is I'm very impressed with Nick Fitzgerald. He's one of the top quarterbacks in the SEC, either side, East-West, to watch for and to watch out for. Because the guy really, I thought, impressed me last year. And I am interested to see what they're able to do, but I see Georgia as a very good team, and the reason being is because if nothing else, they've got a defense that looks very, very, very impressive. And when you've got a Kirby Smart led defense, I talked about Will Muschamp earlier with a guy who's supposed to be this defensive minded guy, and it just hasn't necessarily worked out as well as I think he's wanted it to defensively. But when I say worked out, I mean like 1 year worked out. So people will probably give me crap on that video, but could care less. I think that the defense will carry this team. The running game will be a huge anchor. And I think that Jacob Eason will make some strides. If he's a little bit more accurate, I think that, year one was not a bad year for him. But we mentioned it earlier. He's got to take the next step. And he needs to be confident in his own game to be able to do that and know that he's got a really good support system in Chubb and even Sonny Michael behind him to be able to be there and kind of pick up the slack but push him as well. You've got a very good team here in Georgia. It's a young led team because Eason at the helm as a true sophomore. But I see Georgia being able to be very competitive, and they may be a team who ends up winning the East.
And the thing I was going to get to with that point exactly, there are two key games for me on this schedule for them. I think in the end, when everything is said and done, we are going to look at two games. How did you perform in these two games is going to be whether you win or lose the East. October 28th, when you play Florida on a neutral site. You win that game, you have the upper edge on the Gators. The other game, November 11th, one day after our own Dave Oster's birthday, when they go into Auburn to play the Tigers. And the reason why I say that is Florida, and we're going to get to Florida. They're the last one because they won the East last year. They have a similar look. They've got Georgia on the 28th. However, 2 weeks before that, on October 7th, they have a look at home, though, against LSU. It's going to come down to those two games on each side for each team.
I love how whenever you do 2 or 3 or whatever, you end up having it be 4 or 6.
Well, I duel.
It comes down to these two games.
Well, it's 2 on one, 2 on the other. So I got
these 3 games. Comes down to these 4 games.
I got to mirror things. I like mirroring things, but it's going to come down to their game they play against each other, and then the Auburn LSU game. Those are the two that it comes down to, because I look at it and I see, yeah, Ricky, what if they lose to Georgia Tech just like they lost to Georgia Tech last year? I look at it and I go, well, lucky for them, Florida State and Michigan both play Florida, because there's a chance that one of those two teams might be able to bite the Gators to where it's like, okay, they're not ahead of you in any kind of playoff ranking. Even though really it comes down to, with these two teams, it's going to come down to how do you do in conference, because which one's going to play. Right now, for me, Alabama in the title game. Well, the conference title game, I should say.
Well, we've got, a couple more teams to go. But
I was going to say we got a couple more months to go.
But I think we've got a good look here at the Georgia Bulldogs of a team that really will compete for one of the top spots.
Well, and this is where I think that's Brandon's way of saying, let's turn it on to you guys. Let us know what you guys think down below in the comment section. Is Jacob Eason going to take that next step? What do you see for this team? What are some big games on the schedule? And really, is Georgia going to win the SEC East this year? Let us know down below in the comment section.